Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I want to talk about player character death in Dungeons & Dragons. I've recently experienced it, and firsthand, my player character died, and I want to talk about what happens with a player character death. I just want to look at like the meta of player character death in Dungeons & Dragons and explore it. So let me give you the setup here. So I was incredibly fortunate to be invited into a brand new, into a new Dungeons & Dragons game for me. I think this has been running about 3 to 6 months before I came into the game. It's a Dungeons & Dragons Pokemon game. So the Dungeon Master has done a huge amount of conversion work and literally has all 1,100 active Pokemon converted into Dungeons & Dragons stats, has all the moves converted over, has all the abilities converted over, and can very accurately run a Pokemon game. So I was running a Phanpy. My player character was a Phanpy by the name of Fjorn, Fjorn. So Phanpy, if you don't know, is an elephant Pokemon who evolves into Donphan. And I came in at 4th level, and I only played 2 sessions, and I was killed in this set. Phanpy, excuse me. Phanpy was killed in the 2nd session of play, right? And this was highly disruptive and highly unexpected, and 100% my fault. So so Phanpy, my player character, was participating in a gym battle, which should have been all subdual damage, and I encouraged the gym leader to allow Phanpy to go into a lethal damage gym battle, which was literally the first lethal damage, first sanctioned lethal damage gym battle ever, right? So my character is killed, and my character was a 4th level wizard, okay, and the species is Pokemon, and the subspecies there is Phanpy. And at 4th level, I had 34 hit points, okay? I took damage at exactly the amount to kill the character, which was 68 damage. So it was twice the amount of maximum hit points, which is enough for an instant kill. And that means it activated Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule, which is optional, but, you know, this, I was warned as a player, and I was warned as a player character, you know, not to encourage this type of battle, right? And I went against those warnings as a player and a player character, right? So 100% my fault. But the reason why I felt this was safe was the Dungeons & Dragons. But Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition has this optional rule where, and I actually think this is in the optional rules section of the Dungeon Master Guide, where if you take double the damage, there's no death save. You simply die. It's completely logical. It's completely within the purview of any Dungeon Master. But I truly believe this would not hit, and that this would not come into effect. And the reason why is, as a player, I lean on the death save. I think the death save is very, very safe, right? In addition to that, my player character, Phanpy, has a move called Flail, where if you get, like, when you do Flail and you're at full hit points, it's 1d4 plus strength. If you can get your character down to 1 hit point, which is exactly what I was trying to do, I would have been able to hit Daniel, the gym leader, for 8d12 plus strength, which would probably have been enough with all the other player characters helping me. Having already hit, you know, the gym leader, I probably could have finished the gym leader. That was my intent, right? And I was planning to lean on the death save, but it did not work. So let's talk about the meta of player character deaths. So one, I've seen 2 player character deaths in the last year and a half. Beryl, my turtle wizard, and also Phanpy, my Pokemon wizard, right? By the way, I guess I play a lot of wizards, right? So what was really interesting was, first of all, we are talking about this today. Let's talk about why we're even talking about this today. For some tables, this would be nothing, right? And there was even a little discussion that this would not be a big deal last night. They're like, oh, well, you know, you'll roll up your next character, and everything will be fine, right? And first of all, the group was very gracious, and they're like, so what are you playing next? And I said, well, thank you guys for your patience, but actually, I find player character death a little bit upsetting. And so what I would like to do tonight is, if you guys don't mind, I would like to witness the rest of this game. Now, they run a 6-hour game. They start at 4 p.m. and run till 10 p.m. My character death happened at 8:15 p.m., which meant there was an hour and 45 minutes left in the game. And so I said, what I would like to do is I would like to witness the rest of this game, right? Just quietly watch you guys finish out the session. And then I need a couple days to spin down and determine what I'm going to do next, right? So the entire player group and the Dungeon Master were incredibly patient with that, right? One thing that did surprise me was one of the players was like, hey, please text me when you make your decision because I want to see what happens next. And I think the reason he said that is generally people, like my parents did this. They had a wonderful poodle who lived with them for a long time. It was a Bichon poodle. And that Bichon poodle passed immediately within a week. They went out and just bought another Bichon poodle, right? And it released the pressure of that dog passing, and it was like the dog never passed, right? And there's a cute little puppy, and the pain of that death is kind of alleviated. That's the way I would say it, right? So for me, I actually don't want that. I want to feel this, this experience, because to me, that's the point of Dungeons & Dragons, is to experience things you don't normally get to experience, right? And I truly did not seek for this character to die. I sought to put this character in a dangerous space, and knowing the rules of Dungeons & Dragons, it's extremely unusual for a massive damage, instant no death save kill. It's pretty rare, right? So in my opinion, I was rolling the dice, and the only thing that was going to kill me was a natural 1, right? And so 19 out of 20, this is going to work fine. It didn't, right? So, although I have to say, everybody at the table was like, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea. So others definitely saw this coming, right? So, here's what really surprised me, right? So one, looking at player character death, this is what I see. Player character death puts a burden on... I'm sorry, let me get all the way there. So if your group plays for fun, this is a non-issue, right? Your player character is never going to create... If the goal of your Dungeons & Dragons game is to play for fun, you're never going to experiencing anything real. Nothing I'm talking about will be a problem for you, right? Because it's just a piece of paper, right? And that's where I'm at right now. Is each player character, the moment I receive the invitation, right? I don't even need to see time at the table for a player character to be real for me. Recently, I was invited into a Call of Cthulhu Delta Green. I created that character, right? And the Dungeon Master did not proceed. The Dungeon Master did not run any sessions. That player character is still very real to me, right? I have a backstory, and at this point, I have a front story, right? I am starting in my head to tell stories with this player character that the Dungeon Master never made a space for, right? Or the Game Master, because that's Call of Cthulhu. And so it's really, so to me, it's, I'm an evangelical Christian, so when you think about, pro-life, right? Life starts at inception, right? Life starts the moment of creation. Same thing for a player character, right? To me, the moment I receive that invite and I have been permissioned by a game master or a dungeon master to make a character, that character is fully real and is a new identity for me, right? So this group, are they playing for fun? That's a really interesting. So one of the things is, by my character dying, it made me look at this group and say, what is this group playing for, right? What is the purpose of their play, right? And it's very interesting. I don't think this group is playing for fun. I don't think that's their purpose. I think there are a lot of... So one of the things I'm really incredibly amazed about is, right now, I have a Dungeons & Dragons group. It's 5 players. We meet on every Thursday night at an FLGS. And every Dungeons & Dragons group has its own, it's like a fingerprint. It's a unique group, right? So this group, right, that I'm playing with right now, that plays this Dungeons & Dragons Pokemon session, they have their own unique fingerprint. They are a unique group, right? And what's really astounding and what amazes me is why are they playing, right? So I play Dungeons & Dragons to grow, learn, and change. That is what Dungeons & Dragons is for me. I want to improve as a human being, and I am convinced that is why Dungeons & Dragons was created. Gary created a human flourishment engine that would allow people to improve themselves, to grow, learn, and change by doing formal experimentation across the pillars of combat, interaction, and exploration. Now, combat, of course, is virtual, right? We combat our deficiencies. We don't learn actual real combat for Dungeons & Dragons. That's not a thing, right? So all of that is happening and is a distinct, So why does this group play, right? So many groups play for fun, and the reason why is the tyranny of fun. Because it says game, many groups will say, oh, well, we're playing this to have fun, right? And I get it, because most games, that is, there's a lot of reasons why a person can play games. Like one of the, gambling, those are games. People don't play those for fun. They play them to get money, right? So there's already another type of gaming, and a huge segment of gaming that isn't for fun. It's literally for, for monetary gain, right? I play Dungeons & Dragons, which I actually don't think is a game. I think it's a human flourishment engine disguised as a game, by Gary. That's my humble opinion. And that it's a very unique, take, right? So, it's super unique. It's literally just me, right? So why is this group playing? I think this group is playing to experience Pokemon directly in a way that has never been equaled, right? They are able to make choices for how their Pokemon evolve, what TMs their Pokemon use, what moves, what abilities, and they can, here's the Pokemon. There's a Curlia. There is which evolved from a Ralts. There's a Houndour, which last night is evolving right now and should evolve as a Houndoom, right? But we literally ended the session at the point where the white light was experiencing it. So you don't really know, And I think that's the incredible thing about Dungeons & Dragons. It's so unpredictable, and so many things can happen because of the dice, because of the math rocks, right? There's nothing like it. A Hollywood screenwriter sits down, an author sits down. There's no randomness there. There's complete control, right? Gary created a narrative system that interrupts. It is truly astounding what Gary did, right? He created this narrative system that interrupts the primary creator, which is the Dungeon Master, and then allows input from secondary creators, which are the player characters, right? And all of it's in real time, right? And it's incredible. There's just really nothing like this. It is truly astounding, right? So you have all this, going forward. And so this group, in my humble opinion, is very much, they are running this Dungeons & Dragons game with the specific purpose of experiencing Pokemon, right? In a way that has never been made available before. So, and that's no small thing to say, because I play Pokemon Go. Everybody else at the table, they've played, Pokemon Silver, Pokemon Ruby, Pokemon Sword. They've played the traditional Nintendo video games. But there's so many ways to experience, but you might have a person who experiences Pokemon primarily through the CCG. You might have people who experience Pokemon through buying plushies, right? There's a lot of ways. And this is, I'm going to be able to interact and be a Pokemon directly. That is astounding. And so I don't believe that this group is actually meeting for fun. And there was some evidence that that was the case, because there was something that happened in the game prior to my player character's death, which was shocking. So there was something that happened at the table. It involved one player and another player, and there was a very strong, dramatic response to what happened at the table. And the game literally had to shut down for 15 minutes. And one player who was not at the table was being texted in real time by multiple people at the table, giving them updates on the problem that had occurred, getting requests for what do we do now, for solutions. And truly, just, I couldn't believe it. And it had nothing to do with me. Right? Usually I'm the source of drama at a table. This was drama that was completely divorced from me, right? I had nothing to do with it. I was not the genesis, right? But what it told me is that this group, they take this game very, very seriously. Fun is not the first goal of this group, in my humble opinion, right? I really think the amount of time that has been invested in this, the amount of time, focus, and energy means that the real goal here, and I don't think any of them said this out loud, I think it simply grew like a plant, was to, as directly as possible, experience the world of Pokemon and allow free agent decisioning in that world, which no other method of Pokemon really allows. It allows it at a much, much more limited view. But here you have an engaged, incredibly powerful, incredibly adaptive storyteller telling the story, right? So what happened from the player character death? So here it is. It was a burden to me, and I'm carrying that burden now. I'm doing what I said to the group. I'm taking 48 hours to think what happens, what should be my response to this, right? And then there was a burden on the Dungeon Master. It was very clear that the Dungeon Master was disappointed that this event had happened, right? He had warned me as a Dungeon Master. He had warned me. He had taken the non-player characters, the entities of the game, to warn my player character. And when this happened, it was not the Dungeon Master choosing to do this. It was the dice making this by fate happen. And there was a very real burden that went onto the shoulders of that Dungeon Master. And that disappointed me too. And I felt some guilt, right? That the Dungeon Master's game was somewhat disrupted. Because this should have been a huge celebration of a bug type gym battle being won and everybody at the table getting a gym badge. But there's this dark element in the middle of it, right? And all the gym leaders were going to have to get together. The player characters had to take a moment. It slowed play. It was an event in the game, and so that's on me, right? So that burden, and then in addition, there's a burden on the player characters, right? One of the player characters actually gave an oration for the life of Fjorn. And really, definitely gave him his flowers, said, he died with honor. This was his choice. We celebrate who he was, the scientific, in the game, he was gathering scientific data, the advancements he had given to Pokemon science. And, it was really a wonderful oration, really beautiful. So the reality is, death is a burden IRL. And in Dungeons & Dragons, we see a reflection of that burden, right? We see firsthand a weight that goes on the shoulders of the Dungeon Master, a weight that goes on the shoulders of the player whose player character died, and a weight that goes on the other player characters. And I think, the amount of pressure that is doing is it puts the most pressure on the player whose player character died. It puts second most weight on the Dungeon Master, because they had the ability to do something to stop this, and my Dungeon Master did everything possible to stop this, right, from happening. But still, I could just tell from his comments, his general demeanor, that he felt some responsibility, even though none of the responsibility was on him for this. And then the player characters just feel a loss, right? So that's my take on what is actually happening. All of that is my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below.